Guys, this is your notes for lesson 9.2, the first day of reflections. We'll do multiple days over this to get all the different nuances to it, but we're just going to start with the basics. Yesterday and the day before we were talking about sliding a figure around. Today we're going to be flipping it over, and that's the informal definition that should go in your notes on page 119, is that a reflection is just a flip. And sorry about the camera quality of this, it's about the best we can do. And a reflection is also an isometry. This is, remember, when your pre-image and your image are congruent. Congruent meaning they are the same. You are not going to change its shape. You are not going to change its size. You are going to just move it around. Only this time we're not just going to be sliding it around. We're going to flip it over so that the orientations end up being the opposite. So the first one, it says point P, which starts here at 2, -1. It's going to be reflected across the y-axis. Now your y-axis, remember, is this vertical axis, if I could trace it correctly, and I need to flip across it. So right now I'm on the right side of that axis. I'm going to end up on the left side, but specifically I need to note that I am 2 units away from the y-axis. So when I flip over, I would also need to end up 2 units away. So the image of point P, meaning point P prime, would end up at -2, -1. We're going to do the same thing for the next few problems. Point R starts at 4, -5, so down here in quadrant 4. Now this one's going to reflect across the line x equals 2. These were lines that end up being not the axis, basically. We have to remember what type of lines they are. And remember, when you can't put it in slope-intercept form, that means your slope is not a number. And the only non-number slope we've had is undefined. This is an vertical line, a line with a slope that passes through the x value of 2. Some of you have just memorized that it's a vertical line, which is awesome, but you can also figure it out that way. And I'm going to note, again, just like last time, I happen to be 2 units away from the line I'm flipping over, and I'm 2 units on the right. So when I flip over, I'm going to end up 2 units on the left. So if I go 2 units away from my line, on the left side, R prime ends up right here. And you'll notice this line's right in the center of these 2 points. And specifically, the coordinates of R prime are 0, -5. You're not going to go left or right, but to graph it, you would just go down 5. Point S is going to flip over the line y equals 1. This one is in slope-intercept form. Just remember, when you don't see the x, that means the slope was a 0. So you're going to have a y-intercept of 1, but you're not going to be having any type of rise. So you're going to have a horizontal line. I'm going to take the point -1, 2, and I'm going to flip over this horizontal line. Well, I'm currently above that line. When I flip over, I'm going to end up below that line. Specifically, I'm 1 above, so I'm going to flip and I'm going to be 1 below. So it was S. That makes our image S prime right there. S prime is at -1, 0. My graph's getting a little messy because of all the colored lines. Hopefully that's not too misleading. Last one, 0.05 up on the y-axis. We're going to flip this guy over the x-axis. So as a reminder, the x-axis is the one that's going horizontally through the middle of your graph. This point T, this pre-image, is currently 5 above that line. When you flip over, you're going to end up 5 below. There's already a point here. That's okay. T prime would be in the same location. So we could say T prime is also at 0, -5. So when we do that with points, that's how it works out. Next, we're going to be moving on to graphing whole images that are shapes. And it's still going to work pretty much the same way. Our picture just won't end up as cluttered, honestly. We are going to take this triangle and reflect it across the y-axis. So the whole triangle is going to flip over. It's still going to be the same triangle. It's still going to be an isometry. It's just going to be flipped over. So I need to go to each and every corner, each and every vertex, figure out from that line, and go the other side of it. Meaning point F is currently 1 away from this line, and it's on the right side. So I'm going to flip over it and go 1 away from that line on the left side. So I'm going to put the point, don't forget to label it, F prime is there. I'm going to do the same with my other points. I currently see that Q is 1 away from my axis on the left. I'm going to flip over it, so I'll be 1 away on the right. Q prime is now in quadrant 4. And then lastly, point, I think that's an A, is currently 1, 2, 3 units on the left. So I'm going to flip them over and put them 3 units on the right. That'd be point A prime. So this one's a bit confusing because we had all this overlapping, but I'm going to connect all my image points. So Q prime, A prime, F prime, A prime, and F prime, Q prime. You end up with the same triangle. It just got flipped over that line. I also wanted to ask for the slope. So these are good review questions. I'm finding the slope of F prime, Q prime. It's going downhill, so we will for sure have a negative answer for this. And if I count rise over run between these points, I see that I'm going to be rising down 4, running. So down 4, right 2 gets me negative 4 over 2. Every time you write a fraction, you need to make sure it's reduced. That reduces to just negative 2. The slope of F prime, Q prime is negative 2. Part B. Sorry, let me get my camera adjusted. We're going to reflect this guy over the x-axis. Ooh, sorry. So my x-axis, highlight it, is right here. Everybody's going to flip over that line, so I need to figure out my distance from that line. Point M is currently below that line. He's below it by 2 units. So I'm going to flip above it, and I need to stay 2 units away from it. M prime is currently in quadrant 1, right there. K, the preimage of K, is currently below my line. So I'm going to count. It's 3 away from my line, so I'm going to flip it and go 3 above my line. K prime is also in quadrant 1. P is below the line. It's 2 below the line, so when I count, I will go 2 above that green line. P prime would be there. And then we got this weird little point L. It's on the line. So if it starts 0 away from the line, you need to end up being 0 away on the other side, meaning L prime is exactly where L was. They're the same spots. So then I connect my points. I double check to make sure they look congruent. They should be in isometry, and they are. Then we're supposed to find the length of L prime P prime. We could do distance formula. We could check for Pythagorean theorem, but when you actually go to find these points, L prime, P prime, they're on a vertical line. These are the ones we could just count. These points are 2 away from each other, so their length would be 2 units. So that's nice. Saves a little bit of effort. So then part C. Again, still on page 119. I want to reflect across the line y equals 2. Now remember, if it has a y equals already, you're in slope-intercept form. It's just that the number in front of x was a 0, so it's gone. You can have a y-intercept of 2, but then don't rise, but run 1 or run 5 or run 15. It won't matter. You're going to have a horizontal line. So we're going to flip over that horizontal line. Excuse me. I have point, I think that's a z. It's a 2. So we're going to flip it over so it's 2 below the horizontal line. So my image of z, z prime, would be here. M is 2 above the horizontal line. So I'm going to go 2 below the horizontal line. It'll still be right next to z prime. And then we have point G, which is 3 above the horizontal line. So I'm going to go 3 below the horizontal line, putting G prime here. Connect your points. I don't want a bunch of points. I want the actual image. One more on this page. We're going to reflect across x equals 1. This guy is not in slope-intercept form. You cannot put him in slope-intercept form. So it's a vertical line. It's a vertical line that passes through all the x values of 1. And you'll notice I drew right through point L. Point L is on the line. Its image, L prime, will also be on the line, 0 away. W is not 0 away. It is 2 to the right. So when I reflect it, I need to go to the left. W prime would be over here in quadrant 3. Point F is 3 to the right of that vertical line. Remember, it's not the y-axis, it's that line, which is why I colored it, that you can almost see. I'm 3 to the right, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 on the left. One of the most common mistakes is people will flip to suddenly using the axis instead of the line being specified. And barring my poor tracing abilities, it does actually look like an isometry. The last problem that we did on the first day of notes is on the back side on page 120, and you'll notice it says translation. We're going to be throwing in different types of transformations altogether just to make sure that we know when we're doing what. So remember, this is when it gives us the rule. We start out with a point x, y, and those points are going to be changing. They will be changing so that the x's have 2 subtracted from them, and then the y stays the same. X either takes you left or right, and since it's a -2, that's telling us we're going to shift everything left 2. And then the y is by itself. You could think of it as y plus 0 if you want to, but that just means you're not going to go up, you are not going to go down. This thing will stay exactly where it is, other than being shifted left 2. I'm going to use another color just to make sure this doesn't get confusing. So I'm going to take point U, shift it left 2. There's U prime. Take point R, shift it left 2. There's R prime. Point V goes left 2. There's V prime. Point C, left 2. There's C prime. I'm going to connect my points to the best of my ability. You'll notice that the orientation didn't flip. This was not a reflection, it's a translation. So it just looks like it slid over. So that should work. Give the bookwork a try if you haven't yet, and give also the IXL that was assigned on this day a go. Good luck!